Developed by Sandfall Interactive and published by Kepler Interactive, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a turn-based RPG that has seen massive success, going as far as breaking records at the Game Awards, receiving 12 nominations and winning 9 of them, one of them being Game of the Year. Expedition 33 sold a whopping 1 million units in just 3 days and has proceeded to cross the 5 million threshold since its release. The game initially released on PS5, Xbox Series X, Steam and Game Pass on the 24th of April 2025. As usual, before we begin, please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. Without further ado, let's get into the expeditious lore behind Expedition 33. 67 years prior to the game's opening, a disaster called the Fracture occurred. As a result of that, the city of Lumiere became isolated from the rest of the continent, and a yearly event called the Gamage also happens by the painters. The people who are the age displayed or above perish. So the game opens and we're introduced to one of the main protagonists, Gustav. He has a staring contest with the number displayed on the monolith before throwing a rock at it for funsies. Mael, another one of the main protagonists, then enters and tries to get him to help set up for the festival before they embark on the expedition, but he pretty much says no. Mael and Gustav yap back and forth until Mael mentions the flower Gustav has laying around, which he plans to give to Sophie before he leaves, but Gustav doesn't know what to say since it's been so long since he's last seen her, when Mael tells him to be direct. Gustav meets with Sophie and asks to talk. She accepts the flower and they exchange awkward conversation until Gustav kinda finally gets out what he wants to say and wishes there was another path for their future, basically implying they're former lovers at this time. The conversation ends with Sophie asking Gustav to walk her to the harbour, to which he accepts. They arrive at the harbour when Gustav runs into his apprentices who give him a specially made uniform before his expedition thanks to Sophie. He puts it on and it shows more of his prosthetic arm since he lost his actual arm in a workplace accident. The Gamage happens and a new number is painted. 33. Shortly after, everyone behind them perishes. Gustav and Sophie share a final emotional moment before she sadly perishes. Gustav, trying to cope and mourn the loss of Sophie, is attempted to be comforted by fellow expeditioners Lucien and Catherine when they share a drink. After a bit, he promises he's okay and goes off on his own exploring the expedition festival, where he meets the apprentices and is given a journal to take on the expedition and record what goes down out there. He finds Mael and attempts to convince her not to come on the expedition because she still has a lot of time left and it's a lot of risk, but she responds saying she'd rather risk the 1 year on the expedition than spend another 9 years in Lumiere waiting for her turn to arrive. Shortly after, Gustav's sister Emma arrives at the festival, who turns out to be the chief counselor and is not happy about Gustav embarking on the expedition, calling it a fool's quest. She continues on saying he could be doing things in Lumiere instead that will have a better impact, but Gustav responds adamant on his mission to defeat the painters for the sake of Lumiere and its people. Emma gives a speech while the crew of Expedition 33 board the ship and prepare to sail. The ship sets sail until they eventually dock, but when they depart, they're met by a mysterious presence of an older man at the entrance. A member of Expedition 33, Alan, asks this mysterious entity how he survived the Gamage since he appears older, and just as he finishes his next question, he is decapitated. The crew run away in response until an explosive is shot at them, causing Gustav to be injured. Gustav, trying to process everything happening, is then rescued by Lucien and meets with other members until one of them is taken. They disperse and keep going until the rest are taken, where Gustav is the last man standing and is face to face with an unknown terrifying creature. It goes to attack until he's saved by Lucien once again, but then Lucien is sadly taken. Gustav is face to face with the creature once again when it attacks him. Gustav wakes up with his heart having some issues, but after a few pumps he seems to be okay. He ends up in a place called Spring Meadows and venges his way through looking for survivors. He reaches an area seeing a bunch of bodies linking back to Expedition 33 when he sits down feeling defeated. Feeling defeated to the point he spawns in a gun and contemplates offing himself until a voice next to him speaks. It's Lune and she manages to stop Gustav from following through, but he's already accepted defeat with them surrounded by the bodies. However, Lune continues to convince him to continue, and he does, testing his latest invention, the Luminar Converter. It works, and then Lune mentions the indigo tree to go look for the other survivors. They arrive and see a message.
Mile to the weird corals. Head north. Look for a door inside a hut.
Where?
Lune is confused but suspicious of the message because it wasn't signed off, and protocol is to always sign off a message. Gustav says they might have been in a hurry, but Lune isn't quite buying it. However, Gustav is just happy they have a lead and someone has Mael, which makes him eager to go. But Lune reiterates the protocol and is still suspicious of the message. They continue back and forth about protocol, and in the end, Gustav ends the conversation by going to look for Mael. Lune reluctantly ends up following behind, and after a long day, they settle for camp. At the campsite, Gustav is still adamant and eager to find Mael, but Lune, being the critical thinker, tries to settle him and tell him let's not endanger ourselves before we even get the chance to see her. She also mentions the man they encountered when they docked and wonder how he survived the Gamage, but after some more back and forth about Mael, Lune reminds him of the mission at hand.
No, we have a mission.
Oh, fuck the mission!
Then she drops the jaw-dropping C word.
I didn't take you for a coward.
They arrive in a new area called Flying Waters, and through a long stretch of hallway, at the end of it is a hut that the pair go to check out, which seems to be some sort of mansion. After a bit of exploring, Gustav finds a room where he finds Mael. They reunite, and Gustav relentlessly apologizes for leaving her behind at the beach. Lune asks Mael how she got there, and while she answers, a mysterious entity walks in. Mael mentions this entity has been helping her, but has no idea on what or who it is. They head outside when Mael mentions Noko. The mysterious entity makes an appearance and is a little gestural. He mentions Verso and calls Gustav and Lune intruders, but Mael tells him to relax since they're both human. They continue their journey and arrive to a field of flowers. Gustav spots a flower identical to the one he gave Sophie before she perished, until they're ambushed by a Neveron. They take him out, but he seems peaceful. Then Mael walks up to him and does something to him before he jumps away. But Gustav took that as a sign of hostility and starts shooting at it, missing every shot. When asked about it, Mael says it somehow felt familiar, like she'd seen it before. Mael has a nightmare where she sees a deceased expedition member and a young man who seems to have dealt the final blow. Back at the campsite, Gustav meets Mael and throws another rock for old time's sake. He checks in on Mael and she begins venting about the situation at the beach when they first arrived, that it hit her harder than when she lost her parents, and then she tells him about the nightmare she's been having. Gustav has too and gets her to promise to run if they encounter the man from the beach again. She promises, but only if he does too.
Oh, I'm running as soon as I see a strand of white hair, trust me. You won't even see me, I'm running so fast.
They venture into a new area called Ancient Sanctuary, which is home to the Gestural Village. They arrive and meet the chef, Golgra, where they ask for help to get to the paintress. She then mentions someone named Eske to help them over the water, but she won't let them just go and see him. They need a password, and to get the password, they need to enter a tournament. To win the tournament, they need to fight the stranger. So after 3 fights and heading into the 4th and last one, we're introduced to the stranger. It's Ciel. Before the fight starts, she reunites with the other crew members until the Gestrals request a bit of fighting entertainment. After the fight, Golgra gives the expedition the password for Eske. They settle at the campfire for the night, and while the crew are trying to process that they're actually going to meet Eske, Mael has a vision of a girl in a mask that doesn't say a word. The girl in the mask reaches out to touch Mael until the white-haired man makes an appearance, and we learn the girl in the mask to be Alicia. She silently points at Mael multiple times when the white-haired man places blame on Mael. Mael questions what's happening until the white-haired man says she's going to make everything worse and warns her to let the crew spend their final year in peace. Mael returns to reality and is comforted by the crew when she explains what she saw and begins having a panic attack. The crew arrive at Eske's nest and run into a Gestral named Suniso who asks for the password. Gustav gives the password, but his response makes Gustav become very empathetic and apologize relentlessly. Nonetheless, they go in and meet Eske. Gustav asks for help to cross the sea. Eske is on board, but he needs something first. A rock named Flory, which helps him swim, but was stolen by his arch nemesis who was revealed to be Francois, and he actually lives next door to Eske. The crew meets him and it turns out he's a turtle. They ask about Flory when Francois gets violently upset due to them apparently stealing the rock. They defeat Francois and get the rock, giving it to Eske, but it turns out the rock they got wasn't Flory, and the rock they need is actually in another location, the Stone Wave Cliffs. But before they enter, Mael has another nightmare. It features the same people from the last one, but this time you can see the young man doing the naughty before he's standing inside a burning house. They venture through stone-wave cliffs and reach an area where they get close to Flurry, but before they can get to the rock, a dark and sinister threat awaits the expedition. As they venture further in, the path lights up and the vibe becomes more intense. They get to the end and the beast awakens. They take it down in style and find the rock. They jump on SK ready to set sail, except for Mael and Gustav. Gustav looks for another rock to throw when they're interrupted by the white-haired man who attacks Gustav. Mael begs him to run, but he stays and battles him. Gustav is victorious, but he loses his arm and says this line.
For those who come after. Right?
You promised!
Gustav runs at the white-haired man but gets a sword through him instead. While Mael is grieving, the white-haired man approaches her and tells her he did her a favor. He continues on saying they want what's best for the families, and just as he's about to finish her off, someone else enters the picture, saving Mael. The white-haired man tells the stranger to stay out of the situation since he chose to walk away, until he responds saying it's time to let it go. But the white-haired man just wants his family back. However, the stranger says it's not his family. He goes to check on Mael and sends her off while he deals with the white-haired man. But then, the stranger and the white-haired man have an interaction that raises some questions. Back at camp, Mael grieves and is comforted by SK. Ciel walks in and sees Mael passed out with SK and goes to sit with Lune. They talk about how whenever they're with each other, it's due to something tragic. Lune begins venting and almost talking to herself when she says the plan hasn't changed and they're still heading for the monolith, and continues ranting to the point Ciel intervenes and calms her down. Sometime later, the stranger enters the camp and gives the expedition Gustav's prosthetic arm, but it seems he's wearing an expedition uniform. When questioned on it, it turns out he's from Expedition 0, which was the very first expedition. When again questioned on how he's alive and not old, it seems like at some point in time, some of them stopped aging and aren't affected by the Gamage. It's at this point we find out who the white-haired man is. Renoir. They ask him why he's been attacking them and caused massacre to the team, when we learn because of their immortality, Renoir believes it to stem from the painters and is willing to commit mass murder to protect the painters and enjoy his immortality. However, Verso isn't a huge fan of the immortality and offers his assistance to the crew. Before they accept him, we learn the stranger's name to be Verso. Mael starts throwing rocks off the cliff in memory of Gustav when Verso arrives. He tries to make conversation with her when we learn Gustav to be Mael's brother or foster brother. He tries to comfort her, but she already knows what he's going to say and says she doesn't need it because she's lost so much family that she just wants it to stop. On their way to the monolith, they reach the forgotten battlefield when Mael requests to bury Gustav. Lune would, but wants to follow protocol until Ciel chimes in saying we can find a place to bury him along the way, when Verso says there is a spot he can be buried. They get to the bridge and Mael notices the bodies lying around when Verso notices it and checks in on her, but her response shows she's overseen so much death and surrounded by depression. Due to the grieving process, she starts lightly snapping at the others until Ciel calmly tells her they need to continue. After taking down a rude stranger blocking their way, they reach the burial site and bury Gustav when Mael vows to finish what he started. Back at camp, Verso reveals next steps, one of them being to reach Minoko Station to recruit an old friend of his for help to take down the Paintress's heart, as she's protected by a barrier, and if the heart is destroyed, the barrier falls. Luna asks what it looks like, but Verso doesn't know. He does know it's in a location called Old Lumiere though, which confirms the others' theories on Lumiere being part of a larger city before the fracture. Mael meets with Verso and the topic of conversation goes to sadness until Mael starts laughing out of nowhere due to all the sadness talk. Verso asks her why she joined the expedition since she's half their age, and she says being out here seemed better than out there at the time. Mael kept Gustav's expedition armband and gives her one to Verso, calling it the Disaster Expedition. Back on their journey, they reach Minoko Station where they meet the Joshua himself. He tries to impress the girls, but
Ladies, could I interest you in a duel?
After recruiting Minoko, they arrive in Old Lumiere and make way for the center for the Paintress heart. However, they reach a certain point with a building blocking their path. Verso tells Minoko to show off a bit, and he does, but he does a little too much and causes more destruction than intended. Lune wakes up to Minoko crying and apologizes for what he did, but nonetheless, they stay on the mission of finding the heart, hoping Mael and Verso are doing the same, where they'll naturally regroup. The trio reach an area where Ciel finds one of SK's stones and saves it for later. Shortly after, she talks to Lune about how she accepted Verso's plans pretty quick and asks if she trusts him. Lune responds saying he's all they've got and she trusts he has the same goals as them. However, while Ciel admits he's been helpful, she can't help but have this feeling he's hiding something. Lune finds a journal from Expedition 58 and finds out about an axon before finding out some groundbreaking information regarding Verso, and Ciel becomes concerned because Mael is with him. Wondering what this information is, Mael wakes up greeted by Verso before they make their way until after a battle, Verso is just gone, disappeared without a trace. Mael gets concerned, but nonetheless she continues on and finds herself in an area back at the manor where she gets a feeling of familiarity from it. She arrives at the manor with the door opening for her when Verso comes in knowing they would open it for her and attempts to attack the person at the front. However, he is quickly stopped before Renoir comes out and says, "This was your plan? Really?" We see the appearance of Alicia once again before the door shuts, then Verso and Renoir go back and forth until Mael shows her eagerness to take him out, but then Renoir decides to drop the S word to shake things up a bit. And with the timing of everything, Lune and Ciel show up to confront Verso on the fact that Renoir is his father. After a long battle, Renoir launches a projectile at the crew. The crew seem to be okay, except for Noko, who was not in good shape at all. With Renoir still present, Mael tries attacking him but nothing happens, until Verso steps in and swings his sword, when time stops and everything goes black and white when their swords connect. Alicia and Mael meet, with Alicia removing her mask, and we see a striking resemblance between the two. Mael asks for her name, but due to Alicia's injuries, she can't really talk and remains silent. Shortly after, the manor and the heart are teleported away, which angers Verso to the core. Back at camp, Lune and Ciel scold Verso on why he never told them about Renoir being his father, and he responds saying, "Quite frankly, it's none of your business, but I also cut ties with him quite a while ago." However, he still gets accused of lying until Ciel chimes in defending Verso and says, "We're now a team. We need to trust each other or we won't get far." Minoko comes in bringing Noko, or what's left of him, when Lune asks Minoko if the stories of Jestrel's reincarnating are true. Minoko confirms it, but not all of him will return. Verso apologizes and basically admits defeat with his original plan to get to the paintress failing, until Lune mentions the Expedition 58 journal said he knew another way. However, Verso confirms it to be a dead end. It seems there's someone else who can help on their journey to the monolith, the creator. It can make a weapon that can pierce the barrier the paintress hides behind, but it requires certain materials. Chroma, a lot of it, and the only source of the large amounts of chroma are entities called axons, but it's a dead end because they have never been defeated. Verso says it's a slim chance of them taking them out and not dying, but Lune takes that window of slim optimism, saying death is coming either way, and pushes for the plan to battle the axons. Verso reveals there are 3 axons around, but at least 2 axon hearts are needed. They head to the first Axon Island, Visages, and when they get inside, they're introduced to the Mask Keeper, and he tells them Visages invites them to join him, so they head over to him, and when they meet him, things seem rather chill, until Ciel spots a mask on the ground and picks it up, but it seems holding it got a bit too intense for her, so she throws it back at him in response, and Visages is not happy with her throwing the mask like that. So after defeating Visages and the Mask Keeper himself, they go back to camp, and Lune gives the first Axon Heart to the Curator, but he wants Mael specifically to give it to him, and when she gives it to him, she sees a flash of Renoir which startles her. Nonetheless, they move on and head to the final Axon Island, Seren. When they get in, the crew is taken aback by the overall architecture of the place and how beautiful it looks. They get to the edge and are introduced to Seren herself, but they have to work their way down to get to her. They eventually get to her and take her down, with Lune delivering the coup de grace. The crew head back to camp, with Mael giving the final Axon Heart to the Curator, and when she does, she's back in black and white. She sees the female Curator, and before she can finish her sentence, the Curator attacks Mael, putting her back into reality. The crew comfort her, but Mael is just confused with what's happening, to the point she starts fearing the Curator, wondering who it is. But nonetheless, the Curator uses the Axon Hearts to craft a sword to break the barrier and gives it to Mael. Before they head out, the group have a moment where they process that they're actually about to face the painter. Paintress, until we find out a very important secret that Verso's been hiding from the crew. Escape is made out of wine, so drinks for everyone, except Mael. Verso heads out to take a final look at the monolith before Alicia joins him, and she gives him a letter before he removes her mask, sharing a moment with her until Renoir makes an appearance, giving Verso a pep talk since they're about to face the Paintress and Renoir's been trying to protect her. They arrive just outside the monolith where the barrier is when Mael pierces and breaks the barrier, allowing them to enter. When they get inside, they reach the Paintress, but they can't do any damage to her. Mael walks up to it when she enters another black and white scenario with the crew joining her, and she sees the female curator again, but then all of a sudden the hair on the girls catch fire until it eventually stops and they're back in reality with the curator disappearing. Verso encourages them to follow her since it might be their only chance, and on the way there they see certain black and white visions to do with the Paintress. One of them being teaching her children to paint, another one where a man sits down next to her before she gets up and leaves, and a final one where she's teaching a boy the piano. They reach the tower peak before facing the monolith and run into another vision of Renoir and the Paintress before Renoir makes another appearance. Renoir and Verso go back and forth when some juicy stuff is said. Renoir continues to convince Verso to leave it be so he can enjoy his immortality, but Verso is adamant on his mission. So they battle Renoir and take him down for a second time, where they watch him wince in pain until he's embraced by the chroma around him and is resurrected, when Renoir and Verso have another back and forth before Renoir attempts to take out the crew again until the curator walks in. Renoir talks to it like it's a mirror of himself, convincing the curator that destroying what's left of Verso won't bring the Paintress back. But then, the curator gets Mael's hand and they give Renoir the coup de grace together. The crew prepare to battle the Paintress, and when they reach her, it's revealed she's the female curator. The Paintress talks to Mael like she knows her until she calls her Alicia. The crew figure out Alicia is the daughter and Mael reminds her of Alicia. She tries to take Verso to go home, but Verso tells her she needs to go instead, until the Paintress has a realization that Mael is not Alicia and Verso is not Verso but simply creations. The Paintress stands her ground on the canvas when the crew battle her and take her down, but she's not completely gone yet, rather injured. The crew then finish her off for good. Before the Paintress is gone for good, she calls Mael Alicia once again. With the Paintress gone, the number on the monolith disappears and their inevitable deaths are no longer. Mael then plants the Expedition 33 flag, marking their journey. On their way back, they begin to ponder on what to do next when Lune chimes in, saying they're not done yet, with questions that are still left unanswered. The crew arrive back in Lumiere, where they're praised by everyone for their heroic actions of defeating the Paintress and basically saving humanity from an impending doom. Mael heads upstairs to meet Gustave's apprentices, and the poor lads already know what's happening when Mael shows up alone. She gives them his journal, but the boy runs off. Verso sits at the end of the pier by the water and opens the letter he got from Alicia, which reveals quite a lot of stuff. It's revealed that Mael is the real Alicia, and the Alicia we see is simply a copy made by the Paintress. The whole family is actually painted by the Paintress to help prevent her grief of Verso. It's also revealed that the Paintress has been a good person the whole time, with Renoir being the opposite. Renoir's the one who delivers the gamage, which is why the Paintress trapped him to delay it, and why the number is painted on the monolith, to warn the humans of Renoir and that she's getting weaker each time and can't protect them from his evil nature much longer. And with that, as Verso puts the letter in the water, another gamage happens with pretty much everyone erased, including the expedition except for Verso. Now we get a glimpse of the past before everything took place in the monolith year 49. Alicia has a nightmare of Verso in his room smiling with the house burning before waking up. Clair, her older sister, calls out to her and she realizes she's lost her voice from the fire when she tries to respond to her. Traversing through the manor, Alicia heads inside the painting room and finds her parents as statues and stuck inside the canvas. Clair comes in and we find out they're fighting each other, which is ultimately what caused the fracture, with Renoir imprisoning her at the top of her monolith and the Paintress having Renoir trapped underneath. When asked if she can help Aileen, her response shows she's super disappointed in her mother for how she's handling Verso's death. And for helping Renoir, she says she's done what she can to help him out, but with Aileen more skilled than Renoir, she can only do so much. However, she made some of the Neverons, or her pets as she calls them, to further help Renoir. She further mentions Renoir is able to destroy her older creations as she weakens, but with Aileen painting her own version of the family with immortality, it makes things a little tricky. However, immortality doesn't equal powerful. The conversation concludes with the antagonists in the real world being revealed as the writers, and Claire offering Alicia to enter the canvas to help Renoir. So she enters Verso's childhood canvas, and they find a hiding spot for the canvas so Eileen can't enter again once they pull her out. However, when Alicia attempts to destroy the canvas, she succeeds but is surrounded by her mother's chroma. Lots of it. Claire tells her to stay calm and don't let her take control. But Alicia freaks out too much, and it does exactly what Claire said would happen. And when the chroma consumes you, it paints over you, which means Alicia is going to be reborn in the world as one of Eileen's creations. And this is where Maëlle would be born, but without the memories of Alicia. Back to the present, Maëlle revives herself with the memories of Alicia and reunites with Verso, where she chooses to identify as Maëlle rather than her true form Alicia. Verso apologizes for not helping Maëlle remember, but so does Maëlle for getting him caught in the middle of everything, and is disappointed in Eileen for painting him in the canvas, giving him the memories of Verso in a positive light where the fire only took Maëlle. Maëlle says Verso wouldn't have wanted his canvas to be destroyed since he loved Escape and the Gestrels, but at the cost of Eileen getting weaker inside a make-believe world which Renoir is trying to pull her out of. The pair see the curator arrive and head over to him when he reveals himself to be the real Renoir. The pair reunite before Renoir talks to Verso and apologizes for what his wife Eileen did to him, until he praises Maëlle for her work getting Eileen out of the canvas and wants to erase the canvas. But because Maëlle hid the canvas before entering, she sees no reason to erase it and wants to stay. Renoir is not happy with her decision to stay in the canvas due to the dangers of a prolonged stay and continues to persuade her not to stay, but she stands on business confident she'll be fine and won't become like Eileen. However, Renoir disagrees and is not down to go through it all again, getting absolutely furious. He causes another gamage to force Maëlle out, but nothing happens and they fly away. Back at camp, Maëlle is learning of her painter's powers and getting used to them, but of course with little experience has trouble. Noticing her struggle, Verso assists her, giving her advice, and she begins getting the hang of it to the point she revives Ciel and Lune. Maëlle catches the girls up to speed when Lune has a go at Verso for leaving Maëlle in the dark about everything. Ciel gets curious on if Maëlle can revive everyone with her newfound painter's powers, to which Maëlle confirms but needs chroma, which Renoir controls in the canvas. However, it was discovered earlier on by Gustave that the chroma inside the deceased expeditioners remained inside of them and never went to Eileen. Maëlle, learning this information, responds saying that that kind of chroma isn't pure, so it can't be used to revive like it did Ciel and Lune, but it can be used in other ways. And the other way is gathering the chroma from the deceased expeditioners, turning them into a ghost or zombie army to battle the Nevrons in Lumiere. The crew returns to Lumiere with the final objective to battle Renoir and get him out of the canvas for good. They reach Renoir when Maëlle tries to reason with him one last time. However, after everything that's happened, he feels he has no choice but to erase the canvas. However, Lune chimes in saying you can't set boundaries of their life for them. Maëlle vents a little and says she tried finding new joy after the fire, but after Verso's death, she found it impossible. Until Renoir responds saying, "It gets better, I promise you." He continues on saying, "I'm doing what's best for you even if your friends are right," before the protective dad voice comes out.
You treat me as if I'm still 5.
I treat you as if the shadow from the worst day of our lives is going to suffocate you and take you from us too!
The crew prepare for battle when they take down Renoir, but struggle due to him regenerating health, until Eileen returns to the canvas and assists the expedition so they can finally take down Renoir once and for all, getting him out of the canvas. In the end, Maëlle tells Renoir, "You want control. You want to feel like you're doing something. You couldn't save Verso, so you're trying to save us, but you're not. And erasing the canvas won't do anything but deny a sense of feeling." Renoir responds saying he was trapped within the monolith for 67 years, but he persisted. He shows his reasoning for why he persisted, and it shows Eileen dying outside the canvas in the real world, and Renoir doesn't want that for Maëlle, but she doesn't want to lose her friends. Renoir ends up accepting Maëlle's decision to stay within the canvas before disappearing. Verso jumps through to find the last piece of his soul and talks to him before Maëlle comes in when Verso warns her she's going to be deceased if she stays in the canvas, but she doesn't want to leave, knowing the canvas will be erased once she does. She continues on saying, "In the canvas, I finally feel like I'm something, whereas in the real world, I barely exist." Verso tells the boy to stop painting, but Maëlle interrupts. Verso prepares to battle Maëlle in order to stop the painting and erase the canvas, allowing the family to properly grieve. However, Mael defeats Verso, and before Gamaging, he begs Mael to stop the boy from painting so Verso can peacefully leave. Lumiere is now saved, everyone is revived including Gustav and Sophie, even Verso is recreated, but Mael slowly comes to the same state as Aileen with her health gradually declining. With the main story done, it's time to get into some things that happen in the game and figure out why the things that happen. So when you get to the end, you have two options, fight as Mael or Verso. As for Mael's ending, her side is the meaning of delusion, not able to accept the fact of death and wanting to keep everyone alive to satisfy her own delusion within the canvas, but at the cost of destroying herself. Everyone that was revived and the Verso that was recreated were revived, but not the complete version of themselves from what they were prior to the Gamage. Basically living in her own fantasy land and wanting to live a life of delusion. However, as for Verso's ending, his side is the meaning of a harsh reality. The Desan family mourn at Verso's grave, with each member putting certain memorabilia on his grave as a memory of him, meaning they're accepting the loss of Verso and have to move on from it, which Aileen couldn't accept originally, hence the whole canvas situation in the first place. If you didn't pay much attention to the story or dialogue like me because there was a lot happening, you were probably confused by this line from Verso. Verso says this because he knew the family wouldn't open the door for Verso because of his attentions and convinced the crew to travel to Old Lumiere so he could get to the manor and get his hands on Aileen herself and take her out, but of course Renoir comes out basically trolling him of his plan the whole time. So you may have been confused when Renoir was talking to the curator like it was a mirror of him. The curator, as we know now, was revealed to be Renoir. Was the real Renoir? The Renoir the crew were fighting was a painted Renoir created by Aileen to stop Renoir himself from erasing the canvas because Aileen couldn't cope with the death of Verso, hence why she trapped him beneath the monolith. When this happens at first, you're like, what is happening? But when Verso reveals the immortality part of the painted family, it all makes sense. The painters is the source of the immortality who's created the painted version, and Renoir seemed to enjoy being immortal. The expeditions head out every year to take out the painters because they believed it was her causing the Gamage, so Renoir attacking the expedition was him protecting Aileen so she stays alive and he keeps the immortality, even though the painted numbers are a warning that she's becoming increasingly weak to defend the expeditioners from Renoir causing the Gamage because he's trying to get Aileen out of the canvas. There's quite a few theories surrounding this, but based on dialogue between Alicia and Claire, it seems Alicia is the culprit behind the fire due to being manipulated by the writers, a rival of the painters. And because Verso passed away in the fire while Alicia survived, before she woke up, she had a nightmare of Verso smiling inside the fire. So there's been some theories circulating around that Verso intentionally traded his life because he wasn't happy, as he felt like he wasn't enough constantly with his parents. And through relationship levels, we learned that Verso still wanted to be an artist, but not the kind his parents expected. He wanted to be a musician instead, but because of his family's interests and passions, they wouldn't support it and coerced him to paint. Man, I have lots of fun with these videos, diving deep into the lore and figuring it all out, putting two and two together, coming up with theories and deciding what makes more sense. I love it. However, that is going to be all for this video, but if you did enjoy this as much as I enjoyed diving into this, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new for more content like this, and I'll see you legends in the next one. Peace.